Barenziah had prepared a pass of sorts for Straw, a makeshift document stating an errand to a temple in the city for a local village lord. She herself glided over the wall with the help of a levitation spell. She had reasoned correctly that by now the gate guards would have been alerted to keep an eye out for a young dark elven girl and a Nordic boy travelling together. On the other hand, unaccompanied country yokels like Straw were a common enough sight. Alone and with papers, it was unlikely that he would draw attention. Her simple plan went smoothly. She met Straw at the temple, which is not far from the gate. She had been to Whiterun on a few previous occasions. Straw, however, had never been more than a few miles from Sven's estate, which was his birthplace. Together they made their way to a run-down inn in the poorer quarters of Whiterun. Gloved, cloaked, and hooded against the morning chill, Barenziah's dark skin and red eyes were not apparent, and no one paid any heed to them. They entered the inn separately. Straw paid the innkeeper for a single cubicle, an immense meal, and 2 jugs of ale. Barenziah sneaked in a few minutes later. They ate and drank together gleefully, rejoicing in their escape, and made love vigorously on the narrow cot. Afterward, they fell into an exhausted, dreamless sleep. They stayed out for a week at Whiterun. Straw earned a bit of money running errands, and Barenziah burgled a few houses at night. She continued to dress as a boy. She cut her hair short and dyed her flame-red tresses jet black to further the disguise, and kept out of sight as much as possible. There were few dark elves in Whiterun. One day, Straw got them work as temporary guards for a merchant caravan travelling east. The one-armed sergeant looked her over dubiously. He chuckled. "Dark elf, ain't ya? Like setting a wolf to guard the sheep, that is. Still, I need arms, and we ain't going near enough to Morrowind so's you can betray us to your folk. Our homegrown bandits would as fain cut your throat as mine." The sergeant turned to give Straw an appraising look, then he spun back abruptly towards Barenziah, whipping out his short sword. But she had her dagger out in the twinkling of an eye, and was in a defensive stance. Straw drew his own knife and circled round the man's rear. The sergeant dropped his blade and chuckled again. "Not bad, kids, not bad. How are you with yon bow, dark elf?" Barenziah demonstrated her prowess briefly. "Aye, not bad at all. And you'll be keen of eye by night, boy, and of hearing tall times. A trusty dark elf makes as good a fighting man as any could ask for. I know. I served under Symmachus' self afore I lost this arm and got invalided outer the Emperor's army. We could betray them. I know folk could pay well," Straw said later as they bedded down for their last night at the ramshackle lodge. "Or rob them ourselves. They're very rich, those merchants are. Berry." Barenziah laughed. "Whatever would we do with so much money? And besides, we need their protection for travelling quite as much as they need ours. We could buy a little farm, you and me, Berry, and settle down, all nice like." "Peasant," Barenziah thought scornfully. Straw was a peasant and harboured nothing but peasant dreams. But all she said was, "Not here, Straw. We're too close to Darkmoor still. We'll have other chances further east." The caravan went only as far east as Sungard. The Emperor Tiber Septim I had done much in the way of building relatively safe and regularly patrolled highways. But the tolls were steep, and this particular caravan kept the side roads as much as possible to avoid them. This exposed them to the hazard of wayside robbers, both human and orcish, and roving brigand bands of various races. But such were the perils of trade and profit. They had 2 such encounters before reaching Sungard, an ambush which Barenziah's keen ears warned them of in plenty of time for them to circle about and surprise the lurkers, and a night attack by a mixed band of Khajiit, humans and wood elves. The latter were a skilled band, and even Barenziah did not hear them sneaking up in time to give much warning. This time the fighting was fierce. The attackers were driven off, but 2 of the caravan's guards were slain, and Straw got a nasty cut on his thigh before he and Barenziah managed to gash his Khajiit assailant's throat. Barenziah rather enjoyed the life. The garrulous sergeant had taken a liking to her, and she spent most of her evenings sitting around the campfire listening to his tales of campaigning in Morrowind with Tiber Septim and General Symmachus. This Symmachus had been made general after Mournhold fell, the sergeant said. He's a fine soldier, boy, Symmachus is, but there was more soldiery involved in that Morrowind business, if you take my meaning. But well, you know all about that, I suspect. No, I don't remember, Barenziah said, trying to sound nonchalant. I've lived most of my life in Skyrim. My mother married a Skyrim man. They're both dead, though. Tell me, what happened to the Lord and Lady of Mournhold? The sergeant shrugged. I never heard. Dead, I expect. It was a lot of fighting before the armistice got signed. It's pretty quiet now, maybe too quiet. Like a calm before a storm. Say, boy, you going back there? Maybe, Barenziah said. The truth that she was irresistibly drawn to Morrowind and Mournhold, like a moth to a burning house. Straw sensed it, and was unhappy about it. He was unhappy anyway, since they could not bed together, as she was supposed to be a boy. Barenziah rather missed it too, but not as much as Straw did seemingly. The sergeant wanted them to sign on for the return trip, but gave them a bonus nonetheless when they turned the offer down, and parchments of recommendation. Straw wanted to settle down permanently near Sungard, but Barenziah insisted on continuing their travels east. I'm the Queen of Mournhold by rights, she said, unsure whether it was true, or was it just a daydream she'd made up as a lost, bewildered child. I want to go home. I need to go home. That at least was true. After a few weeks, they managed to get places in another caravan heading east. By early winter they were at Riften, and nearing the Morrowind border, but the weather had grown severe as the days passed, and they were told no merchant caravans would be setting forth till mid-spring. Barenziah stood on top of the city walls and stared across the deep gorge that separated Riften from the snow-clad mountain wall guarding Morrowind beyond. Berry, Straw said gently. Mournhold's a long way off yet, nearly as far as we've come already, and the lands between are wild, full of wolves and bandits and orcs and still worse creatures. We'll have to wait for spring. There's Silgrod Tower, Berry said, referring to the dark elven township that had grown up around the ancient minaret guarding the border between Skyrim and Morrowind. The bridge guards won't let me across, Berry. They're crack Imperial troops. They can't be bribed. If you go alone. I won't try and stop you, but what will you do? Silgrod Tower is full of Imperial soldiers. Will you be becoming a washing woman for them, or a camp follower? No, Barenziah said, slowly, thoughtfully. Actually, the idea was not entirely unappealing. She was sure she could earn a modest living by sleeping with the soldiers. She'd had a few adventures of that sort as they crossed Skyrim, when she dressed as a woman and slipped away from Straw. She'd only been looking for a bit of variety. Straw was sweet but dull. She'd been startled, but extremely pleased, when the men she picked up offered her money afterward. Straw had been unhappy about it, though, and would shout for a while, then sulk for days afterwards, if he caught her at it. He was quite jealous. He'd even threatened to leave her, not that he ever did, or could. But the Imperial Guards were a tough and brutal lot by all accounts, and Barenziah had heard some very ugly stories during their treks. The ugliest of them by far had come from the lips of ex-army veterans around the caravan campfire, and were proudly recounted. They had been trying to shock her and Straw, she realised, but she also comprehended that there was some truth behind the wild tales. Straw hated that kind of dirty talk, and hated it more that she had to hear it, but there was a part of him that was fascinated nevertheless. Barenziah sensed this and encouraged Straw to seek out other women, but he said he didn't want anyone else but her. She told him candidly she didn't feel that way about him, but she did like him better than anyone else. Then why do you go with other men? Straw had asked on one occasion. I don't know. Straw sighed. They say dark elven women are like that. Barenziah smiled and shrugged. I don't know. Or, no, maybe I do. Yes, I do know. She turned and kissed him affectionately. I guess that's all the explanation there is.